So we'll move straight along into our next speaker, Kayla van Heyden. So her topic will be how recovery storytelling shaped my career as a consumer, carer, and a peer worker. So quite a sort of broad and holistic sort of experience that she's going to speak to. Kayla is a cis-gendered 28-year-old who goes by the pronouns she, her. Peer worker, volunteer, consumer representative, and student. She has many gigs, many of which are on pause after the recent birth of her second child. As a partner, mother, sister, and auntie, Kayla identifies as having consumer and carer experiences with mental distress and recovery. She's worked in the peer workforce for 10 years and across consumer and carer peer roles in government, NGOs, and throughout her career. Sharing her recovery story has contributed to redefining and making sense of her journey as a consumer, carer, and peer worker. Kayla works from home in her spare time, attempting to sleep when her baby does. Can relate to that with a 9-month-old myself, and enjoys all things creative. Let me just flip my page, such as being outdoors, sitting by or swimming in the sea or water. So I'd love to introduce Kayla now. If I get you to unmute your mic there, Kayla, and I'll fade into the background. Lovely to see you again. I'll let you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Kaya Whadjuk, hello and welcome. Today I'm speaking to you with authenticity and from my heart. As I share with you, I share part of me. I ask you to hold this space with me gently. Before I share, there's a couple things I'd like you to know. I may look brave, confident, but it's anxiety, passion, and adrenaline that bind me together. I'm not sharing all my life experiences with you. I'm choosing to intentionally and purposefully share a selected snippet of my journey with you. I share with my why carefully considered. Within my story, I also touch on my carer experience. I'd like to mention that to do this, I've been given informed consent. This isn't just my story to share, so I've thoughtfully considered privacy before presenting today. How recovery storytelling shaped my journey as a consumer, carer, and peer worker. At 14, I was supported by a not-for-profit organisation called Wansley Family Services. I was a consumer in one of their programs under their mental health team called COPME, that stands for Children of Parental Mental Illness. This program is an early intervention program for young people aged 5 to 18 that have a parent with mental illness. At first, when I was offered support within the program, I remember being skeptical and distrusting. I didn't think that I'd open up about my home life with anybody due to the fear that people wouldn't understand or judge my parent and I. I also remember feeling confused. I didn't really have the words and literacy to talk about my experience or even understand what my experience was. I didn't know what this program was or why I needed it. My journey with receiving support started with a social worker. She would pick me up from home, take me out the house to a cafe for a milkshake, and talk to me about what was happening for me. I liked the idea of getting out the house, and I thought it was being nice, being bought a milkshake and sitting in a cafe. Over time, I even started to open up and trust her. It was then that I started making sense of this concept, mental illness. And I started discovering that my mum has a mental illness. The realization of this was hard. Prior, I just assumed that I had a dysfunctional family with lots of feelings and behaviors flying around with no literacy to make sense of what was happening. When my parent was well, it was great. There was love. There was lots of love. There was connection. There was laughter and incredible memories as a family. When my parent wasn't well, it was tough and these days were dark. In short, there was grief, loss, depression, numerous suicide attempts, inpatient stays, some stays longer than others. There was anxiety, fear. There was very high highs and very low lows. For me as a young carer, this always meant something different. For the most part, it wasn't my carer roles and responsibilities that broke me in two. It was the fear, worry, and sadness that lived within me due to the love and care I have for my parent. It was the isolation, fear, and self-stigma that I held on to, of having never spoken to anyone about what it was like having a parent with a mental illness, and having never spoken to someone about what was happening, in worry of what they would think if they had known. Once I understood what mental illness was, and once I understood what this uniquely meant for my parent, things started making sense. They certainly didn't get better, but I had knowledge, understanding, and this anger for the world, with knowing there was a reason behind this chaos happening. It wasn't my parents' fault. Having this education shifted my entire perspective. I'd like to use the concept of the elephant within the room, but for me, it was the elephant within the family home. The metaphorical elephant in the room represents an obvious problem or difficult situation that people do not want to talk about. That's what mental illness was for my family and I. Mental illness wasn't talked about in school. It wasn't talked about within my friendship circle, and it certainly wasn't talked about within the dining table amongst my family each evening. This experience was so isolating. I had never felt more alone. As prior, I didn't have the education, literacy, words to put together to make sense of my experience, never mind anyone else. So I carried it around with me. Isolation, shame, anger, hurt, and sadness. I wanted to die. I didn't think life was worth living. I self-harmed frequently. It became a coping strategy of mine to live. And when that stopped working, I spent time in and out of psychiatric wards for suicide attempts. This was only the start of my journey. I went through a range of other experiences that contributed to my mental distress too, not just my carer experience. Housing insecurity, homelessness, sexual assault. All of these things also contributed to me feeling distressed more often than not. What is wrong with me? I thought. And when I went looking for answers, I received labels, diagnoses, medication. This wasn't a straightforward process. The diagnoses changed, the medication changed, and so did my perception of self and identity. Fortunately, I had a life-changing experience as a teenager. I vividly remember being on a camp with the organisation that I just spoke about, Wansley. I was convinced to go, not by the lady that bought me milkshakes. It wasn't her that convinced me to come. It was a young person with bright red hair. She was pretty, kind, relatable. She told me it would be good to get out of the house, so I went along. This person was a peer support worker, the first I'd ever heard of it. I met her along with many others. Around the campfire we sat, and as I toasted my marshmallows, looked into the fire, and felt the warmth in my body, I also had the privilege of hearing the peer workers talk about their lived experience, their home life, and their experience of having a parent with mental illness. I held on to every inch of what was shared that night. Through storytelling, I learned that I wasn't alone. Me and many others were so drawn to these stories. It was these stories that bound us together. Through camp came connection, friendship, tears, laughter, understanding, and insight into what it's like growing up with parental mental illness. I found connection, hope, and inspiration. I was able to harness these feelings of inspiration, and this turned into taking the steps of becoming a peer worker through studying community services. At 18, I was working for Wansley as a peer support worker. A full leap around as a consumer to an employee. This was bittersweet. My biggest mentors were once my support workers, and here I was now working alongside them. I was able to use my care lived experience into something worth sharing with others, stories. With these stories, I was able to write my own narrative of what life was like for me, growing up with a parent with mental health challenges, through my lens as a daughter, sibling, and young person. Along with what helped me get through my darkest days, the experience of being able to not only gain employment through my lived experience, but could make sense of my experience through writing and storytelling, was healing parts of me that were once broken. I worked at Wansley for 7 years. I shared my story over 30 times through different versions to different audiences, such as primary schools across the Perth metro region to year 5 and 6 students, to teachers and parents within primary schools. Within the wider organisation, to colleagues, to young people aged 5 to 18 on school holiday activities and camps, to UWA, to over 50 people that were emerging OT students and more. My story that I shared wasn't just a story. It was a part of me that I was able to give to the world to inform, educate, and hopefully inspire. My story was authentically mine. My story was my life. It was a little part of me that I give to others. And although storytelling can be challenging, with good self-care, it's just as rewarding. It was a craft. I crafted my story repeatedly, as I shared again and again. This was healing for not only me, but for others. The feedback that I received showed the benefit of storytelling had not just on me, but for others. Some of the feedback I received over the years was heavily related to reduced stigma, reduced isolation, increased connection, shared experiences, curiosity about recovery, curiosity into mental health challenges, and relatability that others had with their own experiences. I was able to connect with others in a unique way through my story, and more often than not was met with connection in the same way back. Through others feeling brave to talk about their own experiences, I was met with curiosity about mental health challenges and recovery. These topics and concepts aren't talked about enough for children and young people, and I felt proud to be a part of this. I eventually continued my studies and went on to study mental health, peer work, and other relevant courses. I also moved through employment opportunities within the peer space and worked for a good mix of not-for-profit and government orgs. Wherever I went, storytelling followed me. I've since been able to make sense of, craft, and share my consumer story of living with my own mental distress and recovery. My why was different this time around. I shared my consumer story because at 14 I wanted to die. I share my consumer story because at 14, all I knew about was the biological medical model, medications, diagnosis, psychiatric wards, and clinicians. I would lie if I said that I don't find any benefit in the biomedical model, as here I am 10 years later, regularly taking medication and still linked with appropriate supports that's a part of my recovery. However, at 14, all I knew was the above. I did not know about hope. I did not know about recovery. No one ever told me that I would get better. I didn't think that I'd ever get better. No one ever told me that just like with a broken arm, one day I may recover, and I have the potential to live a life worth meaningful for me still. No one ever mentioned the term recovery alongside the term mental illness. My identity was taken from me. I was no longer Kayla. My identity became solely around having a mental illness. I was so heavily stigmatized. And by stigmatized, I'm not talking about the stigma I faced from others within the community. I'm also talking about the stigma that I faced internally. The judgment, hatred, and isolation I felt within me. My story wasn't mine. It was written for me. It was written within psychiatric units into case notes. It was written by clinicians into treatment plans, and it was told to me and for me. I was told what I needed to do to get better. I was told what medications I needed to take. I was told what diagnoses I had. I was told what feelings I had and why I had them. This was the very start of my mental health journey, and a dark and isolating one it was. Until I met peer workers, until I heard the concept of recovery, until I gained insight and awareness on what mental health meant for a person and how this is unique for each individual. Until I heard stories, until I heard others' real life experiences that have been lived by them. And then I started to make sense of my own mental health experiences through writing, through crafting my story, through sharing my story. I started to heal within. I started sharing this heavy, isolating burden that was me with others. Others wanted to hear what I had to say. Others connected with me through my experience. Others shared lots of similarities to me. Others shared similar struggles, similar strengths, and similar lens of hope. And those that didn't seemed to be inspired by my journey, and I was thanked for sharing. I was paid for sharing. I was employed for sharing. My carer and consumer experiences were shifted into employment and peer work. Peer work gave me the means to share my stories. I shared with children and young people, with adults, through one-on-one conversations, at parks or cafes with consumers, within peer groups, schools, conferences, and the workplace. For me, storytelling was empowering. It gave me the means to grab hold of my identity. I shifted from I'm Kayla and I'm a carer to I'm Kayla, I'm a consumer and carer to I'm Kayla and I'm a whole entire human being with many things that make up me, and I get to dictate this. So again, Kai Whadjuk, hello and welcome. My name is Kayla. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a partner. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm an auntie. I'm a mother. I'm a dog owner. I'm a peer worker, consumer rep, a student. I'm creative. I'm sensitive. I'm loving. I'm passionate. And I live with mental distress and recovery. I get to dictate my story. I get to take power back that was once lost. I get to reclaim my identity. I get to reclaim my story, my experience in my lens and my way. I get to use the power of literacy and storytelling to own my experiences and to share them in hope to educate, create awareness, reduce isolation, and to inspire others to talk about their experiences. I can openly share about my experience within professional settings, but the end goal is to be able to openly talk about my experiences within my family home, over the dining table. As little Kayla never got that. Little Kayla would have benefited from talking about the elephant within the home. My why is breaking down stigma. My why is hoping others don't live in isolation like I once did. My why is hoping one day we live in a world where mental distress is more commonly talked about than not. My why is because every individual that comes across mental health directly or indirectly should know about recovery, and that this is possible right from the very beginning, not halfway through. My why is to hope others don't carry a diagnosis as a label tattooed across their forehead like I did, and can make sense of their identity outside of a label and know they are worthy of this. Recovery storytelling saved me as a carer, a consumer, a peer worker, and as a person. You've heard part of my story, a part of my journey. So I encourage, if you're to share your stories, think about your why, think about your audience, purpose and intention. A close friend of mine uses the statement, we share from our wounds and not from our scars. And some scars we don't talk or share from. Some scars are just too painful to revisit. And that too is okay. Because once we share our stories, we aren't just sharing a story, we're sharing part of us. And that comes with great magic and heaviness. Here's to reclaiming identity, who we are not, what's happened to us, what has not, what hope we have for ourselves and for our loved ones, and where we hope to be. Here's to taking back our own literacy and language about our life and our experiences. Here's to feeling empowered to turn tough times into a form of craft and creating a story to empower you, heal you, and hope to touch many others in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing everything you did there. And it just in our conversations leading up to this event as well, it just, it just sort of like, I just feel like expansive right now. And I know we're only like, a few hours into day one, but there is some questions. And also, can I just start with some of the comments? Because
absolutely.
Yeah, I just thought, I'm just going to roll back up here. Kayla is speaking for us all. Kayla, thanks, Kayla, for not letting the systems and others decide your identity. Awesome sharing. Powerful, Kayla. Thank you. Kayla, you inspire me every day. Thank you. That's from Madison. Kayla, you're an absolute gift to the world, an absolute inspiration. I value you. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Absolutely agree, Kayla. Your story is brilliant. Thank you. So it's very, very clear that you're obviously resonating, your story resonates deeply, and I concur. One of the questions that came through from Katerina, I'll just read this out. It says, sharing your own lived experience can be challenging in various ways. How do you know what to share and not share? For example, something that's hard for you to talk about, however, it's extremely important to share a story. How did you get around this?
Thanks, Ben, and thank you, Katerina, my dear friend. For me, I'm taking a moment to reflect. For me, like I said, storytelling is a craft. It takes practice, and it's about crafting what's important, unique, and purposeful to you. For me, what I did was practice my craft. I didn't become an artist overnight. I practiced it. And I always consider my why at the forefront whenever I speak. What's my audience? Who am I speaking to? Why am I sharing? Is this for me? Or is this for the majority? Is this for the collective? Is this for something greater than me? I don't share for me. I mean, hey, I can do that with a friend. I can do that with a loved one. I can do that within therapy, right? I share for others, and I share with carefully considering what my why is. However, like I mentioned, a close friend once said to me, we share from our wounds and not from our scars. So with this in mind, there's also scars that we don't share from that are too painful to look back at and revisit, and that too is okay. So for me, my experience has been about, hey, there's these scars that I really want to speak to. I've got this powerful experience, but when I speak to it, it rattles something within me. I feel unsettled. And letting go that, you know, you're just a person. You can't change the world. You can't change the system. But what you can do is what you can do. You can share your stories, but parts of your stories that feel safe enough. I don't like the word safe, because what even is safety, but safe enough to share with for yourself and for whoever is listening and watching in the audience. So I don't share parts of my story that may be powerful if I feel like I'm giving too much of me. The world deserves a little bit of me, but not all of me. I need that for my family. I need that for my three-legged dog. I need that for my babies. I need that to keep doing this great stuff that I do. So I think that's a unique experience that has to be figured out for each individual themselves, but that's what I can share. Thanks.
Yeah. Beautiful. I resonate with that so much as a lived experience speaker, facilitator. Like, it really underpins, if I'm not sharing my own perspectives but helping others find their voice and stuff, is that I love what you said there about intent. Like who am I doing this for and why? This is, I think you just hit a really potent point there, because I know that in a lot of people, you find a lot of meaning, a lot of healing through verbalizing this kind of stuff. But I also like what you said about safety. It's like, what even is safety? Because that's everyone's lens of safety looks different. You know, trust, privacy, confidentiality, the level of comfort in which they can explore, all that kind of stuff, right? So I can't resonate with that deeply enough. And I love your messaging there, just to say to everybody who's in attendance or watching this recording that you got to go at your own pace, right? And consider, like, where is the right time, place, and space for me to share? Is that in a therapeutic setting? Is it behind closed doors with a professional? Is it with people I love and trust? Is it over the dinner table? Is over the dinner table unsafe? Is at work unsafe? Is it an element of people within the workplace that potentially it's a bit of uncertainty around, not the whole, but to not create that be a barrier for people to ever say anything at all, but to find their voice in the right way. Yeah, such a powerful point. Just another comment here, Kayla. Were there any authors that helped you hone your craft in storytelling or that inspired you? That's from Michelle.
Not authors, but people. Many, many people that are here today and that we're not able to be here today, or that are no longer with us today, that have inspired me along my journey. A huge majority of the peer workforce, of the giants that have supported the space. It's people, it's friends, it's just human beings. No one with this famous title or anything, but human beings have certainly supported me, and the list could just go on, really.
Yeah, I really love that. It's just the humanness in everybody is what inspires you, right? And another one here from Jack. Hi, Kayla. I just wanted to thank you personally for what you've shared. I connected a lot with what you said. It's really powerful. Thank you so much. You're incredible. So no question there, actually. Just a massive healthy dose of connection and validation from Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful stuff. I am just checking to see if we've got. Oh, yep. So I'm just jumping between my little windows here. Let me just minimize this. Can you share that quote again about my story had been written for me by clinicians, then got to write my own? Do you remember what context that was in what you've just shared there?
Well, it wasn't like a quote or anything. It was just part of my story. I don't remember word for word, but the gist of it was that I felt like my story and my experiences were taken from me. They were my stories and my experiences were talked for me and talked at me. I didn't have a voice within that. The power of that laid within clinicians. It sat within hospitals, within inpatient stays and units. My stories become case notes. They were written into treatment plans. I wasn't a part of those. That power really got taken from me, and through my experience, if I've ever had, opportunities to view case notes and to view treatment plans and to see some of this writing, I didn't even agree with it. I didn't even resonate with it. I thought, who is this? That's not me. That's not what's happening for me. So to be able to take back and actually write what was happening for me, what my experiences actually are, super powerful stuff, but does come with privilege.
Sure. Yeah, just if you wouldn't mind me just plugging into the back of that, I know in my own sort of healing and recovery journey, the finding of my voice, I would arguably put in the number one top of the pyramid, the tippy top of everything, because it allowed me to kind of let go of the stories, the judgments, the alienation, all the things I felt, because others' views of me, clinician reports, psych reports, whatever. I'm the master of my own destiny, my own experience, not you. So it's like, to whatever degree it's helpful, it's like, thanks for your perspective.
Yeah, right.
And here's the truth, because I'm the only one qualified to speak on the truth, because it is me who we're talking about.
I love that. And on that, Ben, I have had a peer worker and a social worker at 2 different times within my life that have said, I'm going to take some notes. Is that okay? And I said, that's okay. And they've said, here's the pen. I'd like to share that power with you.
Nice.
I've been able to write my own case notes and dictate that. So I really love, if there's any, I'd love that to go out there too. We can share that pen. We can share that power, right?
Yeah. Self-advocacy and personal responsibility, empowering that. One last quick thing, and it has to be a short response, sorry, just for time. Do you have any advice to someone starting out in the industry as a peer worker, or someone that you know that you wish you had known sooner?
That storytelling and sharing my story didn't happen the first week into being a peer. It's something that really was a craft, and I had to craft it over time and learn what my own parameters were around safety and what safety meant for me. Connecting with Finding North, connecting with WAPSN, the Western Australia Peer Support Network, connecting with Comwa. I'm big on just connecting with human beings, and was really probably not jumping in the deep end and sharing my story straight away, really sussing out the parameters and figuring out those concepts of safety for me and with others, and making sense of my why, and really understanding peer values, and the intent behind the sharing. Is this for me or is this for others? Yeah. And that's a big question to unpack, but I'll just leave it there.
I think it's a really powerful place to end it, actually, because it leaves this deep introspection around for people, that invites them to consider thank you, Kayla. So now in my own world, what does that look like? Last little final thought is that in my own experience, I probably jumped in the deep end, and in hindsight realized that the way in which I was sharing was probably unsafe for others. And it was only, and I had some great mentors in my life that kind of reined me in pretty quick and said, oh, Ben, probably not the best thing to go into, to speak to the impact. your experience rather than the details of those events. And so that's just something in the aspect of safety I would ask people to consider as well, is that speaking to the impact of your experience as opposed to exactly the detailed what happened is what creates safety for others, and it takes nothing away from the impact of your story either.
Powerful, Ben. Thank you for adding that in.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
If you want to get in contact with Kayla, the best thing to do is actually connect with Finding North Network. Kayla's a busy young mum, so to be able to respectfully filter stuff that she feels she has the capacity for is probably a priority, which I resonate with deeply. So thank you so much, Kayla.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone that's coming here to support me today. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Finding North. See you.
Thanks for watching Explore More Perspectives 2024 on Finding North Network's YouTube channel. Find out more by visiting findingnorthnetwork.com.au or email info@findingnorthnetwork.com.au.